I think great coaching, great parenting is the same exact thing. First thing, and I think coaches more than parents, hope parents always are giving, when I say always, 99%, are giving their kid like, I love you. And so, I got your back. At the end of the day, I got your back, So they've already joined because they're parent. But sometimes for coaches, I think they skip the step sometimes of letting a kid feel like, I actually do believe in you. I do believe in your goals. I do believe in what you can do. And now I'm going to challenge you rather than I'm going to just jump to challenge and the kid doesn't feel like you believe in him.
Welcome back to the podcast. Today's episode is an important one, especially for coaches, parents, and anyone who works with young athletes. We talk a lot about development, toughness, and preparing kids for the next level, but far too often, we don't give nearly enough attention to the mental and emotional weight student athletes are carrying every single day. My guest today is Stu Singer, the founder of WellPerformance. Stu has worked with NBA and WNBA champions, Olympians, national team athletes, and top college programs across the country. But what makes this conversation especially meaningful for me is that Stu has also worked closely with my son for the past 3 years as he navigated his high school career. Stu's work is rooted in the science of mental performance, but more importantly, it's grounded in understanding people, especially young people in high-pressure environments. Today, we're talking about why being in tune with student athletes' mental health isn't optional anymore, what coaches and parents often miss, and how we can do better. This is a conversation that matters.
Just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in.
Please believe it or not, I'm still a cream of the crop. I was just until the age of 18 on the charts. Wasn't even dreaming this far. Believe who you are. The sun doesn't even know it's a star.
Stu, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Wayne. Looking forward to it.
People often associate sports psychology with elite pros. Why is this work arguably more important for high school athletes?
Yeah, I mean, the best way for me to say it is it would be the equivalent of saying like we would only do fundamental work with elite athletes and pros instead of saying, no, why would we not do the fundamentals at the youngest ages, build that solid foundation at an early age, and then they can build off of that. There's a lot you can do once you have the fundamentals down. I think we get it wrong. Not entirely, and somebody like you and your family reached out at the right time, I believe, because what we want to do is say before anything becomes an issue, why don't we just build that strong foundation early? So I think that's how we get it wrong. I think we often just kind of wait it out and then all of a sudden like, oh, I think there's something wrong. Now we have to address that. But what happens on my end is now I'm breaking bad habits to build new good ones instead of saying, why don't we just build good ones from the start?
You mentioned, and we were fortunate in getting you at the right time early in his high school life. And so kids at an early age, maybe it's late middle school, early high school, how do a failure and identity get tangled up at that age?
Well, first of all, we have to understand that the brain is still developing at this age. And in fact, pretty much through about 25, 26 is the typical time that we think of as the brain getting to its full functioning. First, they're not using full capacity quite yet. The other part that we have to understand is that young people are developmentally very much at the ages of right around 12 to mid-20s, very susceptible to what do others think, the judgment of others. Fitting in is extremely important. You're a high school coach, but also a high school teacher. You see this every single day, I'm sure.
I do.
If you look around and you see where the trends begin, the trends begin right around that teenage years. That's where, and then everybody's wearing the same shoes and it's important. Why? Because that feels safe. If I'm wearing the same stuff, that means I fit in, I'm part of the group. And so fear of failure, identity, wanting to be recognized, it's all instinctually built into our brain. Our brain's number one job is to survive. It isn't performance. So I always use the wording, our brain is wired for protection, not performance. So unless a young person is feeling quote unquote safe, and we can go into what that would look like and what that means, performance is not going to be what it's locked into. It's just going to be, look, I don't feel safe in this environment. And that might not be anybody's fault, but it's just the reality of how the young brain works. So that's why it's so important for them to really understand what's going on so that they understand, like, I'm normal. This is a normal reaction to things at this age. Now, what do I do with it?
You mentioned performance a few times, and I kind of want you to explain the difference between mental health and mental performance, but in simple terms for our audience.
So the easiest way to think about it, in the way that I break it down, because I am a sport or performance psychologist, I am not a clinical psychologist. So I actually don't do clinical therapy with anybody. And so I break it down like this when I'm explaining what I'm going to do. I'm going to help you perform at your best. I'm going to help you understand how the brain works, why some of the things that happen to us happen mentally when failure happens, or, you know, a big game is coming up. I haven't been playing particularly well, as opposed to what we might call as mental health. Mental health is more pervasive. It's across all experiences. So I might get anxious for a big game, but I don't get anxious to hang out with my friends. I don't get super anxious for a test. But if somebody's feeling this across like all the venues of life, now we're talking a more mental health related issue, and because now it's impacting everything.
Yes.
Whereas work that I do is really just trying to make sure that they're at their best. The cool part of this, and I think this is something that we should think about, if we teach this part of it, the work that I do, relatively early, it's not a guarantee that we head off mental health issues later on. But it's possible that it becomes preventative rather than reactive down the road, right? So learning these fundamentals, learning why I feel certain things that I experience has the potential to be really preventative for deeper mental health disorders later in life.
Yeah, I appreciate you clarifying, and it made, even for me, who we've known you for quite some time, it is much clearer to me. So I appreciate that. Can an athlete be mentally tough but still be struggling mentally? I
think so. The interesting thing, and we've seen this, well, let me just say it differently. Absolutely, yes. And here's why. Because there are a lot of athletes out there struggling with mental health, and yet when you watch them, you wouldn't know. So you have athletes that are going to be depressed. You may have athletes that are struggling with anxiety disorders. And yet coming off breakups, right? These are real life scenarios, and yet they can compartmentalize and go out and perform. And we know this to be factually true. So it is absolutely out there and happening. But there is some crossover. And so if someone is struggling with everything in life, can it get in the way of performance? Absolutely. You know, so it could be off the court, off the field related stuff, and certainly can impact them on the court for sure.
When players that are performing, or when they're in those environments, and the idea is to be tough, why is the concept of just be tougher, why is that message harmful for teenagers? Because
we are acting like two parts. One is that there is actually something wrong with them if they're not. And now the likelihood of them saying anything, asking for any kind of assistance, help, learning any kind of skill development will be shut down because we're acting like you should just be this. Then you should understand it. And they don't. And the second part is because it makes it something that feels like we either have or we don't have. So if I say to you, you should just be tough, and you're like, well, I don't feel that way right now. I may have it other times, but I don't right now. We're acting like there's no skill in it then. We're just like, it's a switch that I'm able to flip. Instead of us understanding it through the lens of this is a skill to be developed, just like any other skill that we're trying to develop on the court. And if we allow for that, we can get better at it. And so just to say that really, because it puts them in a box at that point. Like if you say that to me, I might never come to you ever again because A, I don't want to hear that again. And B, it sounds like you don't know how to help me at that point.
Right. Right. Hopefully those aren't terms being used anymore, but just in case there are coaches that are listening to this, what's a mistake that well-meaning coaches make around mental health?
Well, I actually did hear this recently. So I'm going to, I won't say who, but one of my clients say that the head coach was like, I don't believe in mental health. And I'm just like, I don't know what to do with that, actually. But what I can say is that's going to shut people down. Now, in fairness to coaches, and I think a big conversation that just needs to be had is, what is real life challenge that we all have to go through? Like, we all have to develop callus on our, we have to go through some stuff to really understand what resilience is. And so there's a big difference between I'm not happy with the role I've been given. I'm not happy with the way somebody said something to me. I'm not happy being called out. Like, that's all fine. And you don't have to be happy with it. But that is not abusive coaching. That is coaching. Now, I might suggest to a coach there's better ways. There might be different ways. You may have to figure out this athlete particularly.
Yes.
If you want to give them feedback. But that is where I do think that we've become the conversation has increased so much around mental health, around athletes and mental performance, which is great. But sometimes I feel like we also have to remember this is supposed to be hard, and there will be really challenging times. So the goal isn't to change the challenge. It's to maybe better understand, how do I get through challenging times and what's going to happen for me as I get through it. And I think a better job reminding young people and parents, quite honestly, sometimes, that challenge is part of all this. But it's not enough just to say, hey, you got to deal with challenge, because they don't know how to. So like, where's that intersection where we're giving skills and we're teaching how to deal with tough stuff, not just saying you're either tough to do it or you can't do it. There is actually an in-between.
Yeah. I have to jump in a little, because I was on another episode and we were talking about this whole part as a parent, and you and I both are parents of kids who play sports, and it is very difficult to watch your kid go through some challenging things. But we also know that it is necessary for them to become whatever it is that they're going to become. And so finding the ways to work through the challenge is more important than trying to eliminate the challenge overall or seeing it as something that's bad. So I'm agreeing with you.
There is a phrase, and it goes like this: don't try to eliminate the obstacle from the path. The obstacle is the path.
Is the path. Yes. Yes.
And so really, getting to that point yet, and let's be clear on this, young people don't know how often to get through the path. So sometimes it's about, biting down on your teeth and going through it. Sometimes it's more than that. And to just say, well, you either, I had a coach tell me one time, I can't, it's not my job to give them confidence. And I would actually agree with that. It is not your job to give them confidence, but it is your job to not prevent them from being confident, right? And there are things that coaches can say and do that can absolutely tear away at a young person's ability to be confident. And I think it was Jade Billis that I saw quoted recently that said a lot of youth coaches, high school, let's call coaches, will say, hey, I teach discipline, I teach, toughness, I teach all these things. These are things that are great for life because only, 3 to 5% will play beyond high school. And Billis said, so that makes it even more important for you to make it a great high school experience for them, because they are going to be done.
This is it.
And so, yes, at some point you don't have time as a coach to take care of everybody, and it's not even your role to be their sports psychologist. But I do think that most coaches should get an education in what are the things that we can say and do that are scientifically like either better for young people or worse. And understand that. So if you choose something, you know what you're choosing. Like if you, well, you know what, I hear you, but I'm still going to do it my way. That's fine. But just know that you heard this. Or sometimes people are like, wow, I didn't actually understand it that way. And I think that will help me in my coaching.
So it's like you're reading my mind, because my question to you, especially about the well-intended coaches, what are a few things that they can do to create a mentally healthy environment without feeling like they have to be therapists?
All right. Big things to understand are principles. And I actually, from my work, have developed about 8 to 9 what I call first principles. First principles in engineering are, what are the things that we must understand so that we can solve the bigger problem? So if there's a problem, we have to understand the first principle behind that problem. One of the first principles I've already mentioned, the brain is designed for, or is wired for protection, not performance. So as a coach, you got to understand, their brains are first going, man, like if I got this adult man screaming in my face or trying to shame me, embarrass me, whatever, call out my toughness, my manhood, whatever, I'm not saying you can never do those things. I'm just saying if that's the only way, then they're stepping on the floor day in and day out like, I need to protect myself. They're not thinking of what is my greatest thing. They're trying to think of how do I not make a mistake, period, because I don't want that. So understand that. Understand the idea of what's within their control and what is not within their control. So I'll hear players, coaches saying like, man, I need someone that can make a shot. You can't make a shot. Making and missing is not in their control. Now, if you said to me, what is within, let's say it's a shooter, what's within their control? I would say hunting their spots is within their control. Coming off screens like they mean it rather than hiding when they're coming off a screen. Showing their hands, maybe communicating like that they want the ball. When they catch, looking at the rim immediately. Like those things are. So as a coach, I want to teach them strong action rather than getting them focused on the outcome, because the outcome's actually out of their control. But if their strong actions are there, they're going to come out of the slump. But Steph Curry misses shots. As a high school player, you're going to miss shots. Like that's just the reality. And you're going to go through some times where you might have a 5-for-5 game from 3. Mm-hmm. And that feels really good. But typically, that means that an 0-for-5 game is coming.
It's coming. It is coming.
And it's not bad, because if you had that, you're still shooting 50% from 3 at that point, which is outstanding, right? Yes. Yep. But they don't understand numbers. And if we on our end kind of act like a bad shooting game is because there's something wrong with them rather than, hey, this is the way it goes. It's going to be like this a little bit. And yet keep shooting, get back to these strong actions. I'm positive that if you take these strong actions, your shot's going to come around. That's the language that we should be using. You're not easing up on them. You're not telling them they don't have a responsibility, don't worry, and just leaving it. You're saying, no, I want to see you hunting your shot. You're a shooter. Hunt that shot.
That's what it should be.
I want to see how you come off the screen. I want to know that you want to take that shot, and I'm going to know it by your actions.
Yes.
And I use a phrase all the time that mood follows action. Often what we see is a young person's missing shots and their mood slumps. So I try to get them to understand, find your strong action, sprint the floor, find, how do you come off screen, show in hand. These strong actions then lead to a stronger mood. But if you're slumped over, there's no way your mood's going to change, because your action is dictating your mood at that point. So find actions within your control. Another thing that coaches need to know is the idea that uncertainty, so the fact that we don't know how something's going to go, is a absolute trigger for nerves, stress, worry, however you want to. So if I care, I want to win, I want to play well. And yet there's no certainty, right? I can prepare extremely well. I can do everything the right way. My wife and I were just talking about this morning. A lesson that we've learned in our household recently is that you can do things the exact right way, and you don't get a guarantee that you get the outcome. So we're not doing things the right way because we get a guarantee. We're doing things the right way because it improves our probability, but it does not guarantee it. They're going through that. right? They want something. And especially if you have some athletes that don't want to just do well at this level, but they want to get to another level, that uncertainty weighs heavy. So being able to have conversations with the young person around, hey, I go through that too. I have uncertainty. I want big things and I don't know if it's going to happen. And now you're normalizing these experiences. So these are all really great things that coaches can do for their young athletes. So you're not dipping your accountability and your standard. What you are doing is normalizing why it is a challenge to begin with mentally. And then you're trying to help them understand better ways to focus. And we can build that stuff right into everyday practice. There's nothing that has to change in your regular practice to do that.
I think you answered my next question. I'm going to say it, but I also want to share something. So my next question was going to be, how can coaches balance high standards with genuine care? But I also, for me, I think the journey, I think the process, that is way more important than the outcome. And so I'm answering it for me. If I was still coaching, I think that will be a very good thing, is to always be talking about this journey. When we hang our hats on the end result that we don't have any control over, that's where problems happen. And that's what stress is. That as coaches, that's when stress levels get high and all of that stuff. But like you said, in regards to the probability of things being what you would want it to be, that comes from just knowing that I'm doing the things that I'm supposed to be doing, and
I'm
that's
doing them
all
over and over and over again. And I know they're good. I know they're for the right reasons. And at the very least, if you do those, what you know is that you don't have to have regret when you look back. I think pain of regret is way worse than the pain of quote unquote failing, because I don't really look at it as failing. If you've put in the right work, I just don't look at it as failing. And Kobe he was in an interview and they said, some people hate to lose and some people love to win. Which are you? And he said, I'm neither. And the reporter was like, I don't know if I'm buying this, and he goes, well, here's the deal. If I win, great. I love that. But the next day I show up and do it all again. If I lose, sucks, but I'm going to learn from it. And the next day I show up and I do it all over again. And so he's like, I don't understand the idea of what failure means, because either way I use it to just stay on my course towards becoming whatever I can become. I think these are important ways to help young people see what they're, I heard it phrased like this recently, and I thought it was really good. It is not the achievement. We just had the Winter Olympics just happen, and so everybody wants the gold, but not everybody's going to get it. And the real value is, what do you become because you're willing to put yourself in the most vulnerable, the most high stakes things that you can possibly do? That's where the value is. Like, that's the stuff that carries you forever. It carries you in the next performance. But it also might carry you as a spouse, as a parent someday, in your profession. Like, these things are foundationally important. There is a concept called the arrival fallacy. I don't know if you've ever heard of the arrival fallacy, which just is like, when I arrive at, my life's going to be what I want it to be. And so what happens is we reach it sometimes. We like, oh, if I just do this, if I get this job, if I win this championship, if I reach this many wins, and we do it. And then all of a sudden it's like, I don't feel different. All my problems that I had prior, I still have. Nothing has changed. And that's when we realize, like, the outcome thing that we're chasing matters, but it matters because of all the other stuff. It doesn't actually matter because you get it.
Yes. We've been talking about, from a coaching or the player perspective, I want to talk about parents a little bit. How do parents unintentionally add pressure even when they're trying to help?
I would reverse engineer the stuff I said before. I would say, parents, don't talk about scholarships. Don't talk about future. Don't talk about what's going to happen, down the road. Let them be present. If they're a sophomore, let them be a sophomore, and focus on what they need to do as a sophomore. Period. I think sometimes we can get too caught up. And again, this is hard, by the way. I think, and again, speaking as a sport parent that had my kids playing in the top AAU levels, my son was a soccer player playing in the highest level of soccer. He, like I got into these things just like everybody else does. And now you're in it. You're in this thing that keeps saying push to the highest thing. But the thing is, at 13, a kid just wants to have fun playing their sport. They're not ready to be young pros at 13. And every once in a while, you might see a kid that kind of is really limited, but like kind of is maybe. Mm-hmm. But I don't mean ready as in they're ready to play professionally, but that they just love it so much that they want to wake up at this time. They want to do all these, but they're not young pros yet, or they're not pros yet. And so somewhere within it, make sure that fun and enjoyment and being present in this experience with these teammates, it's amazing how many adult like coaches, like, so if I'm, like you mentioned before, I've been lucky to be in NBA and WNBA locker rooms. So I'm often with coaches that are guys that, I remember watching playing at North Carolina or whatever, playing pro.
Yep.
And they're going, man, I wish I had this when I was playing or when I was that age. And often it's because like they got there, but they didn't get there in a way that was good for them. Like they wish that they had some level of somebody to say, I don't need to be like this. It doesn't need to be like this. I don't need to frame it like this. But they didn't. And so like they're trying to give back now to younger players who are now at this point pros, and they're still trying to counsel them a little bit on like care deeply. Mm-hmm. And then you got to let go also. You can't hold on too tight, because if you hold on too tight, you start to crush the very thing that you want,
Yeah.
So yeah.
The fun part is important. I've said this on a few episodes now. That has always been the mantra in this house. I think it is very important for parents not to lose what you just said. And I'm saying it because we now live in the world of the transfer portal and NIL and all of these things. And so you have these student athletes who are potentially going to be good enough to play at the collegiate level, but not all of them. And everyone's looking at all of that stuff instead of what is happening right now. And so I want to make sure that didn't get lost. If somebody's in 10th grade, let them be in 10th grade, right? Not a lot of coaches are recruiting 10th graders anyway, regardless of the sport. And because it is a sport, fun should always be one of the goals. Yes, be competitive. Have fun being competitive. But,
yes, and we can learn how fun can be competitive as well. Yes. Like they don't need to be opposites. They can be the same, but that's a bit on us. And I forgot one other thing that I would say. I really do mean it. It's hard to be a youth parent right now, because if your kid's good enough, just good enough, by the way, they don't have to be a 5-star, but if they're good enough, the next thing you know, they're going to be getting, this AAU program's going to want them. This travel club team is going to want them. And so they get sucked in, right? And now they're looking around like, who's getting what? Is my kid getting what they need? We've made it a pay-to-play model, right? So now the parent's like, well, if I'm paying, I want to return on my investment, right? So It is not easy to be a sport parent. I mean, I want to be very clear. I'm not blaming parents for the model that we are currently in. It's the model that they're in, and it messes with us. And then the thing that I said I forgot for the other thing for a parent is no comparison. Don't say that even this is what your older brother or sister did. Don't even say, look at what Billy across the street is doing. No comparisons. Teach them how to have their own journey, whatever that own journey is, because it has to be theirs at some point, right? It's too hard as you get higher for it to be someone else's journey. And that's a way for us to teach them. Now, our job, I always say, is to do it like, when you go bowling and with the little kids and they put the bumper things down in the alley. Our job as parents is to be the bumpers, right? That's our job. But they can kind of go all over the alley. But we just kind of make sure that we keep them at least in the right path. But it isn't ours to like only give them one narrow. And when we do this comparison game, now they're constantly looking around going, I need to evaluate myself based on other people rather than learning how to evaluate themselves. Like, where am I right now? What do I need to do? What do I want to work on? What do I want to become better at? Because it's theirs. Instead of, oh, I'm not as good as this one. I'm not as good as this one. This one's better than me. I'm better than this one. So maybe I don't have to work as hard because I already am the best, because it can work in the opposite. I'm the best kid on my team. Okay, I don't have to work. No, it's your journey, so if you think there's something you want to get better at, not because you're not better than everybody else, but because you want to get better at it. Yeah. And these are all little easy. I say easy. They're not always easy, but easy as into easy enough to understand that we can just, if we do just these, we are giving our kids a way better path at that point.
If there's kids that, I don't know, they find themselves in these spaces of comparison or whatever, and they're struggling, what does real support look like for a student athlete who's struggling?
Professionally or from a parent?
Just parent perspective, just parent.
Well, one of the big things, and this is hard, this is why part of the reason that I think, I don't want to minimize my job, but one of the reasons why my job exists is because it is sometimes really hard. We talked before this show began about how hard it is as a parent to sometimes talk about the most emotional things, which is their kids, right? I mean, there's nothing that's more emotional to me than my kids. And then I'm emotional about them. They're emotional, and it becomes this kind of really challenging, high stress conversation. So first, let's acknowledge that. Two is one of the things that I found to be so important is telling my kids, yeah, I went through that too. I don't know an athlete that hasn't had as part of their journey that didn't have challenge. I don't care who it was. At some point, you don't get the role, the playing time, you miss the shot that would have won the game, and now you miss it. Like, there is challenge in everybody's journey. And I think like great parenting begins with, I get it because I have experienced that too. If you try to act like you never had those experiences, that you never had a moment of doubt in your life, that you never had a moment of, I don't know if I'm going to be good enough to accomplish this, like that shuts things down. If you open it up, now you're just allowing them to speak. I think there are times for us to be advice givers, but I think early in conversations, we need to be better listeners. So good parenting starts with like, let them say what they have to say. You don't have to agree with it, but let them at least get it out and say it. Because if you prevent it from even being said, then you don't know even what you're dealing with at that point. Yep. And so these are all, really, really important parts of the parenting process with a youth athlete. And I think one thing that we can take from the world of therapy counseling is there's a concept called joining. And a good therapist counselor joins with their client. And what they're joining with is their experience and their goals. So they're like, I'm with you. Okay. You and I are on the same side. Yep. Now I might challenge you. So I've joined. We are now in this together, and I am pulling for you. I'm rooting for you. But there are going to be times where I say to you, that's it. That's where you're getting in your way. And I'm going to point it out to you. And I'm going to try to teach you a better way to do this. I think great coaching, great parenting is the same exact thing. The first thing, and I think coaches more than parents, I hope parents always are giving, when I say always, 99%, are giving their kid like, I love you. And so I got your back. At the end of the day, I got your back, So they've already joined because they're a parent. But sometimes for coaches, I think they skip the step sometimes of letting a kid feel like, I actually do believe in you. I do believe in your goals. I do believe in what you can do. And now I'm going to challenge you, rather than I'm going to just jump to challenge. And the kid doesn't feel like you believe in him. Right. So like when we talk about how do you mess with confidence, it's there. It's first, let them know you're with them. You're on their side. And I don't care if it's the first kid or the 15th kid on your roster. There's something that they want. The 15th kid wants something. So can you find that with them? Now you've joined. Now they're like, this guy wants what I want from me, but now he's going to tell me where I'm falling a little bit short of what I'm going to need to do in order to get there. And it feels like support rather than lack of belief at that point. And it's a really fine point, but it is a pretty powerful point.
Yeah. I'm sitting here because I have this question and I don't know the answer. I can't remember the answer. So I'm going to ask you, and maybe when you answer it, it'll refresh my memory. How do parents know when it's time to bring in a professional? They've done all that they could. Coaches are doing their part, but there's still assistance that's needed. How do parents know?
The way that I try to delineate that point is, when does the conversation feel like something that just is shutting down communication rather than opening up communication? Like, I've tried all the basics, I've tried all the typical, I've tried what I know. I can tell they're still not happy. They're not where they want to be, nor where we think they can be. And I feel like I've tapped out, like I don't have, more for it. Like, again, one of the things to remember is part of the beauty of the, finding some, whether it's, doing therapy or doing sports performance psychology, is that it's non-emotional. Like it might be an emotional topic, but there's not the emotion between the two people. And I think for parents, we know it when we're in it. We know the times where we're being kind of triggered ourselves, by what they're doing and saying. We know what they're saying and doing is not going to help them, but yet the emotion's too big. We want to kind of jump in. We might want to, our emotions get in there, which can be anything from frustration to anger to sadness. And now all that stuff is too big to get past whatever it is that we actually have to get past. And I think that's the easiest way to say, when is it time to call somebody else in,
This episode is being brought to you by My Jersey Designs. If you ever want a digital replica jersey, go to myjerseydesigns.com and they'll take care of you. I'm thinking about the athletes again, more on the surface, simple level, but what are some mental skills that every high school athlete should be learning about right now?
Yeah. So I have what I call my 3 core principles of mental strength. So I'll share those, and then I'll kind of explain how we might develop them.
Okay.
The very first one is to play present. So I talked before about letting kids be wherever they are in the process, right? So the moment that we jump ahead is the moment that we're trying to say that we can somehow predict the future. And anxiety lives in the what if, right? So if I say, well, what if I don't get the scholarship offer? What if I don't win? What if I don't play well? That is the beginning of anxiousness. Now, it might not be clinical anxiety. This might just be performance-based anxiety. But so one of the very first things that we want to do is understand, how do we keep the mind present? The problem is the mind does not want to be present. It wants to either go back and figure out what we did wrong, or it wants to jump forward and predict what things do I need to prepare for and get ready for, because it's out there. So the mind, again, survival, right? It's protection, not performance. So the act of being present in the mind is hard. So one of the very first things I do, and young Wayne may enjoy or maybe hate it, but I introduced them to, mindfulness and mindfulness meditation. I have an app that I created, but there's plenty of apps out there. And that is the exercise. And I want to be very, very clear. In fact, in my app, I call it mindset workout. I don't even talk about mindfulness. I don't talk about meditation. I talk about it. It's a mindset workout. And it legitimately is that. The act of coming back to the present over and over and over again trains the brain how to be present, because it will not do it on its own. It's not designed to do it on its own. And so that's one thing that's massive. How do we learn to be present? Why does that matter for an athlete? Because I just missed my last 3 shots. And if I'm stuck in them, I'm in the past. And my likelihood is that I actually get stuck in the future, which is, well, if I miss my last three, tonight's not my night. That's not a true statement, right? So you have to kind of reach that place where, I missed my last three. Forget that. How do I get to the next one and be like,
shot.
I'm ready for this next shot? That's
Yes.
skill building, right? Because a lot of people go, next play mentality, next play mentality. Those are good words.
Yeah.
But the brain is probably not going to do that unless it has trained how to move to the next play. And we have to understand that. Really good advice.
Yeah.
Really hard to do if you have not done anything proactively. Really hard to do. So that's one thing. Two is focus completely on what is within my control. And the thing is, very little is actually in our control. So I always kind of do the process, and then the greater than sign, outcome. Process is greater than outcome, which we have already talked about. Really teaching the idea of, well, what is it within my control? And so that's when I do what's called an exercise that I do, which is called best self. So what do you look like when you're at your best? I don't want to hear about the outcome. I don't want to hear, well, when I'm at my best, I'm making every three that I take. Because that's not going to happen. What I do want to know is, what does it look like? What are all the actions that you take prior to releasing the ball, essentially? And so we're going to get really good at that, because what we want to be able to do is teach them how to remind themselves over and over and over again. I could go 0 for 20 tonight, but I can still run the floor hard. I can still set screens, come off screens hard with purpose. I can still, every single time that I feel like I'm open, I can show that, myself to my teammate that I'm open. Right? I can still attack. I can still do these strong actions, and they're me. So somebody's a shooter, it's gonna look one way. Somebody's really tough, in the post, they're gonna do it a little bit differently. So they have to understand what their best actions are, and can they repeat those? Now, some nights that's going to be a monster game. Some nights it's going to be really bad. I mean, statistically, really bad.
Yes.
But they're still doing the stuff that's in their control. And that's a really powerful thing to be able to do. That's a really deep mental skill to do. And then lastly, the third core principle is to detach from judgments. And the judgments are self-criticism, the opinion of others, and comparison. They will kill us. And in fact, I will tell you that most of the time, even though those other two skills that I mentioned are unbelievably important and powerful, most people, especially young people, are in the judgments. They're either hyper self-critical, they care way too much about what other people think, or they're nonstop comparing. And that is where the avalanche begins. Now, it might turn into focusing on things that they don't control and or not being present. But where it begins more often than anything else, especially with young players, but truthfully, even with college and pro, is that space of caring a bit too much about judgments, whether, like I said, self-criticism, the opinion of others, or comparison. And so I guarantee you get good at those three, you got a pretty mentally strong individual. And they're pretty rock solid principles that then turn into real skill building that we can do.
As you're talking, I'm remembering the journey that Wayne went on in his high school life, and it's so cool to know, because I don't really know the conversations that you guys were having, but I do know that the app was very important. I know that initially it was one of those things he would, be somewhere doing it on his own. But as he got comfortable with who he was as a person, it became one of those things where he shared it with the players, like, hey, this is what I'm doing. And this is, and going through the recruiting process, you're always trying to, this guy's getting this and this guy's getting that. And all of those things culminated into a pretty cool senior year. And I'm not even talking about how he was able to play, but how he was able to manage just having fun as a high school basketball player. And I know, and as you're saying all of this stuff, I'm like, man, all of those things took. And I saw it, from 10th grade and 11th grade. And then as a senior, it became. And so I guess for people who are listening and parents who are at a point where they're like, what's my next step? I can tell you that, at least with you, it's been great. And there's never an ending. Like, there's always an opportunity to become a better version of yourself. But I know that from the time that, Wayne started with you until the end of his high school career, those things really helped him in ways that we as his parents could not. So I thank you for that.
Well, first of all, I appreciate saying that, but I also love the experience of working with him. He's a great kid, and I watch his journey, and it was actually fun watching his journey, because I actually started with him when he was at Lingostown. Is it still called Lingostown Junior?
Yes, Well, he was playing there. It was middle school. Yeah.
Middle school. It's grade, I believe. That was the first time. First year. So to see that growth, for him to go on from this little boy to a young man, and then all the things that he ended up accomplishing was a really, it was fun to be on that journey as well. But you said something that I want to really highlight in this. It takes hold because of repetition, right? I think you had Mike Dunn on. Is that
yes?
Or I know Wayne worked with him. Put it that way.
And
Yep. The guy is a great instructor. He's a great shooting instructor. But his shooting instruction isn't going to change a thing if you don't get the reps in of that instruction. So what anybody has to do, but if we're just talking about the real life example of Wayne, is so he had good shooting instruction, but he had to get into the gym and get those reps up to become a great shooter. He had to do the app. I mean, my thing is, when I introduce it, I listen, you got to do it 7 days a week. It's 10 minutes, 10 to 12 minutes, but you got to do it 7 days a week. And I'm like, now, what's going to happen if you do it 5 days? I'm not driving to your house and reprimanding you or anything, right? But what I can tell you is, when you notice, it's going to be when you're consistent with it.
Mm-hmm.
It is reps.
Yeah.
And those reps are no different. So when we think about the mind, and too often, this is where we get it wrong. We think it's a quote. We think it's a book. We think it's a video. We think it's a one-time talk. Coaches will get a hold of me. Hey, will you come talk to the team? Yes, I will come talk to the team. If you think it's going to change behavior because of an hour-long talk, a half-hour talk, it won't. It's the equivalent of a movie trailer. You're watching 2 minutes, and it should get you excited maybe for the movie, but you don't know what the movie is in those 2 minutes, right? Mm-hmm. And so I can do the talk, but the work is the work. And this is a skill development, and sometimes it will hold, sometimes it won't hold. Mike was probably taught Wayne great fundamentals. There were still going to be nights where he went 2 for 10, or whatever, not because the fundamentals weren't there, but because the ball didn't drop. And sometimes the mind's like that. You have the good fundamentals, you're practicing them, they're working. And then there's going to be that game where the crowd got in my head, my own performance, couple turnovers, couple misses early on, got my head. I wasn't perfect that game. Welcome to the real world.
That's right.
But the repetition over time lets it settle in. And now we have something that we actually foundationally can depend on.
At some point, people are going to go play. And so sometimes there's this pregame anxiety, the butterflies, but more than just butterflies. How can athletes manage that in a healthy way?
Perfect. It's funny that you say that. I just was doing, literally before we did this, I was doing a recording for an app that I've been asked to do some mental performance sessions for, and I did it on this exact topic, which is crazy that you're asking me this.
Nice.
So here's the first thing. So many times, I'll give you an example. My daughter at some of the big, EYBL, showcase tournaments. I remember, she came up to me one time and she's like, "Dad, I'm really nervous." I'm like, "All right, you've been nervous before." "No, Dad, I'm really nervous." And we have 2 ways that we can go in that moment. One is, stop, you don't need to be nervous. It's just another basketball game. Or that is exactly what's supposed to be here. You care deeply about this, and yet it is uncertain. You don't know what's about to happen. It should be here. So the very first thing that we should do about butterflies is normalize it. I do a 1 to 10 scale. I just always talk to my clients about, if you're 7 to 10, that's probably too high. And so I'll walk through couple things that we can do if we're in that 7 to 10. But if we're in the 1 to 4, that's too low. You want some adrenaline, right? You want some butterflies. Butterflies are actually exactly what we want. They are preparing us for performance. So I always try to give them like that 5, 6 is where you want to be. You want to feel something for sure. Mm-hmm. You just don't want it to be so high that it becomes hard to even think, because if you're in the 7, 8, 9, 10, that's where anxiety is so high that it's like it's hard to listen, hard to be paying attention. Our vision tunnels. That's why that pass where you're like, why did he even throw that pass? Like, because his vision's like this instead of wide when we're in a more calm state. So anyway, first thing is to say, first of all, they're supposed to be here. There's nothing wrong, so don't act like there's something wrong. Mm-hmm. 2 is, or don't act, but don't worry that you're all right. Nerves are supposed to be there. 2 is learn how to use breathing. So one of the things that I do with everybody that I work with is really teach them what deep breathing looks like. Deep breathing is a real filling of the belly, expansion of the rib cage, rise of the chest. That's that kind of flow of it. It should start with the belly, expand the rib cage, raise the chest, and full exhales out. And they're long. And that calms the central nervous system. So if you're at a 9, that should at least get you to a 7, maybe.
Got it.
Okay?
Yep.
Kind of grounds you to the present. Then the next thing that we do is we have a little bit of that script going back to what's within my control in the present moment. Well, it's my best self. I can remind myself, listen, I don't know how this game's going to go. I don't know if I'm going to have 20 tonight. I don't know if the coach that's, sitting courtside that I've really hoped was going to give me an offer is going to give me an offer. We don't know any of that. Mm-hmm. What I do know is I will promise you I'm going to run the floor really hard. I will promise you that if I miss a shot or I turn the ball over, I'm going to sprint back. I will promise you that I'm communicating nonstop. And I will promise you that if I'm playing in the post, I'm going to be physical. I'm going to find try to locate my spots. If I'm playing on the wing, I'm going to, be running hard, finding my spots, coming off screen, blah, blah, blah. Right now, none of those things guarantee anything, but they give them a place for their mind to now go from the prediction of the what if, because that's what's really freaking them out.
Yeah.
And now they can something present and something controllable. They leave that place of uncertainty and they come to certainty. I can do these things, which will probably still only get them to a 5, 6, right? They're not going to be at 0 with their butterflies.
Yeah.
But that'll get them into that range of about a 5, 6.
That's perfect. I love the way you explain that. And we've been at this for a little while, and I know you got lots of things going on. So I have a couple more questions as we close this thing out that I was hoping to get feedback from. So if schools treated mental performance like strength training, what would change?
I think a lot of, first of all, just sleepless nights from parents and kids would change. I think, especially depending upon when you say schools, like if we started some of these things in elementary schools, there would be all sorts of behavioral issues in middle school and high school that we would prevent. I think we would prevent clinical mental health related things. Now, when I say prevent, not 100%, things are going to still happen. Behavior is still going to happen. These are kind of developmentally normal. But for sure, we would be doing proactive work that is preventative at that point. And I think that would be really, really big. One thing that we didn't talk about, and I promise you that we could do a whole nother hour for sure.
I'm all for it.
And I am too, is that there is way more in their heads than were in our heads at their same age. Meaning we did not have social media. Mm-hmm. We did not have that nonstop comparison. And that's a comparison apparatus, right? We didn't have the nonstop 24/7 information flow that they do. These are massive barriers. These are massive challenges. So we can talk about why like phones shouldn't be in schools. I hope I don't know if you guys have, but I hope that
I'm hoping it's going away though.
Sorry,
like, guys.
we shouldn't have them.
Yeah.
And for a variety of reasons.
Correct.
But so that's one thing, but then it's like, but they still have them at some point. How do we deal with all the information? And how do we deal with all of the social pressures that come with those things? And we should be working on that stuff, like, because I think middle school and high school teachers are dealing with stuff that if we did a better job earlier on, we might not, and we could get to more educating and less managing at that point.
So we will put that on the calendar as a follow-up. I would very much be looking forward to that. If you've gotten this far, please hit the like button so that we know that you appreciated this episode. Also, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and to the platform that you are receiving this podcast. We would greatly appreciate it, and it will allow you to stay up to date to whenever we release new content. But with this last question for you, and this is particularly for student athletes, what do you want the overwhelmed athlete right now to hear?
Well, this might be unsatisfying to a certain degree, but here's what I want them to hear. You are not alone, and this too shall pass. Like, there's no one that hasn't gone through it, that hasn't gone through what you're going through. Like, it's hard. It's hard to be away for the first time, let alone be a student athlete that's away at school or even a high school student athlete. It's hard. And yet it will pass. You will get through. You will be better and stronger. And even if you don't reach your dreams, like, we want people to have big dreams and big hopes and big everything. But if you don't, which ultimately, if you ask most 10-year-olds that like playing sports what they want to do, they're like, I want to be a pro baseball player, basketball player, football, whatever it is that they play, right?
Yep.
Most don't reach that, right? I mean, majority are not going to reach that. And they're all okay, right? They get a job, they get a spouse, they have a life, right?
Yes.
And so that is reality. So yes, dream big, do all the things, but like, you're going to be okay. And I think sometimes the reminder, like, you're going to be all right, you're going to find your path, would be, it's not a give up at all. It's just enough to let them breathe, and realize, like, it's okay. Like, go for it. And yet you're going to be all right. I say it's not satisfying because it might sound a bit trite, but it really is if there's the biggest takeaway, that will be it.
No, I love it. I think it culminates the simple aspect of what student athletes could hang their hats on. And so I appreciate you, man, for taking the time to have this conversation. If there's one thing I hope coaches and parents take away from today, is this: mental health and mental performance are not separate from the game. They're part of it. And if we're serious about developing young athletes, we have to be just as intentional about their emotional well-being as we are about their strength, their speed, and their skill development. Wins and losses fade, stats fade, but how a young person feels during those formative years, that stays with them forever. And so, to everyone listening, if you're a coach, a parent, or an athlete yourself, I hope this episode challenges you to lean in, ask better questions, and create environments where kids feel supported, not just evaluated. Appreciate you for listening. Stu, I appreciate you for being here, and we'll see you next time.